Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining this afternoon's Cuppa Club with James and Leeds Action to Create Homes, also known as LATCH. James has been CEO of LATCH since 2011 and has been stewarding its growth and impact ever since. My name is Paul Pizzala, and I'm Senior Investment Manager at Ethex, working with James and the team at LATCH on their community share offer. So before we get started, there is some housekeeping to do. And I'd like to let you know that Cuppa Club is recorded and made available to watch via YouTube. And we do edit this down to a shorter 3-minute highlight version to capture all the key points. To say that this is not a financial promotion, and if you do need financial advice, please talk to an independent financial advisor. So the Cuppa Club usually runs for 30 to 45 minutes, and it's a great opportunity to meet and ask questions of the directors, James, and hear about why LATCH is such an impactful organization, how they intend to achieve their goals, and what your investment is funding. And also to ask, about the challenges and the opportunities of this current environment. So, at Ethex, we are big supporters of this sector, affordable homes, social housing, because we really are at a pinch point with where interest rates are at the moment. So please do feel free to ask questions in the chat box as we go along, and we'll weave those into the session with James. So before James introduces Leeds Action to Create Homes and himself, the community share offer is live on FX's platform, targeting a raise of £650,000, principally to provide capital to purchase and refurbish 6 to 8 houses to create affordable and social housing for those most in need. The offer has one-to-one match funding with a potential interest rate of 5% and capital withdrawal from year 3. So, okay, James, over to you. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, good afternoon, Paul, and everybody who's attended the webinar. It's great to have an opportunity to talk about what LATCH does and what we're seeking to do with this share raise. So, yeah, my name is James Hartley. I'm the LATCH CEO. I've actually been with LATCH 25 years, been CEO since 2011, as Paul has said. My background actually is in construction. I initially trained as a bricklayer and worked in construction, and LATCH is and was my dream job, my ability to deploy my building skills, working on empty properties, and also to help people. And that's the core of my interest in LATCH and why I'm here at LATCH. And it's the values that LATCH represents that is key to my activity and what we do, particularly around people and helping people. So it's been a long journey with LATCH. We've changed completely and grown so much in that last 25 years. I think we had 12 properties when I joined. We now have around 108 and increasing all the time. So LATCH stands for Leeds Action to Create Homes, and it really is as simple as that. Creating homes. There's loads of long-term empty properties in Leeds, approximately 8,000, and our job, our mission, if you like, is to raise funding in order to bring those long-term properties back into use. And it is really as simple as that. As we've developed over the years, we've made it more interesting, more complicated, more compelling, if you like, by building around what LATCH does with the features, which is supported housing, retrofitting the properties, providing training to unemployed young people, and ultimately housing homeless people. So I'm committed to LATCH. We have a really strong team of around 22 people are committed to LATCH and the people who accesses LATCH services, and really keen to tell you a bit more about the share issue.
Fantastic. Thanks, James. That's great introduction. And I was really struck by the visibility of the impacts in your offer document. So to quote some stats of your achievements over the past 30 years, I think it's important to create some context around this, because it's a sector that is well established, but has a lot more to do. So transformed 106 empty properties, helped 568 adults and children to have a positive new start, trained 89 unemployed people, recently opened a food bank for tenants, and also really interested to hear you've welcomed 1,550 visitors to your community health and well-being hub. So, painting a picture of all these other things that you do to create a positive impact multiplier in the neighborhoods and communities that you operate in. So with that backdrop in mind, can you paint a picture of what's going on in Leeds and why raising funds through community shares is needed now more than ever?
Yeah, it's very helpful to paint that picture of impact over the years, because that is, in a sense, crucial to everybody who works at Latch, and which gives us the encouragement and motivation to keep going, because we do get very close to our tenants and all the people who we work with, and we see up close the difficulties, the challenges, and in many cases their bravery to overcome the difficult backgrounds and situations that they themselves have been in. So that impact across multiple areas is really important to Latch, and why we feel proud of what we do and why we want to keep doing it. In terms of the picture of Leeds, and more generally, as we all know, cost of living crisis is a serious matter for all our tenants. People on lower incomes are always going to suffer more through cost of living impacts, and our food bank and fundraising and trying to seek money to assist tenants around utilities and food and access to other services has been crucial over the last 2 years. It's always been a feature of Latch's work, because we are working with the most economically deprived groups in Leeds through our housing and support services. In terms of Leeds, you've got this weird contrast. You've got demand for housing, which is massive. The Leeds City Council's housing options has approximately 8,000 people registered with priority A status. Never mind the 20-odd thousand who have less priority status, but they're classified as people who are inadequately housed at this stage. So alongside the 8,000 people in high need, you've got approximately 4,000 long-term empty properties in areas of Leeds, all privately owned properties that sit there empty. And Latch, in a sense, that's our story there, those two challenges, and that's the context in which we operate in Leeds. Housing is fundamental. All the services around mental health and everything that does women fleeing domestic violence, housing is a premium in Leeds. And we're really pleased to be able to bring houses back into use. Excuse me, bring houses back into use and provide housing to people who are accessing other services as well. Yeah, it's an ongoing challenge for us, has been all the way through, and we keep doing what we can. But there's a lot going on in Leeds. There's a lot of groups trying their best to address these issues, but the issues are not getting any easier, as we all know, in our own personal circumstances.
Yeah. So it's not getting. The story is more impactful than ever in a way. Got a question from Martin, James. Just going to jump onto this one if that's okay. He asks, how do you go about identifying and acquiring properties to be brought back into use? Really good question, actually. So I saw some good stats in the offer document in terms of how much it costs to acquire and retrofit one of these houses, so, which is obviously an important part of the economic and the business model that you're running too.
Yeah. Well, as I said, there's 4,000 long-term empty properties in Leeds, and although, so in the sense of not that hard to find, they are actually hard to close deals on, strangely enough, because many have been inherited in strange circumstances, have complicated backgrounds. But we work closely with Leeds City Council, who have an empty home service, so they will flag available properties to us. The communities in which we work, we know the communities, so we know where the empty homes are, so we can approach owners or track down owners and approach them. And people come to us because we're known in the community. People who are the owners of long-term empty properties will often come to Latch and do a deal based on what their aspirations are, which is often involves some serious negotiations, because everyone seems to believe their property is worth quite a lot more than it really is. But there you go. And then obviously we work with estate agents. We're registered with all the key estate agents, stating our preferences in terms of locations, price point, and costs, and bedroom spaces and such like that. So when it comes to the refurbishment element, acquiring them, and then we make offers. We usually, where we fund it, because we use our investment income or loan income or grant income, we're usually effectively a cash buyer. We have the funds raised already, so we're able to visit a property, assess the works required on it, do a cost evaluation of the works required, and make an offer within a day, and be a cash buyer. So we're usually quite effective in picking them up, and then we drop into conveyancing. We recently acquired some CSR support around conveyancing, which is very helpful. And then we push through the conveyancing, and then, you know, we're planning, refining, ready, and then we hit the ground and get working on them. So it's relatively straightforward because of the volume of empty properties around us.
Yeah, brilliant. So just interested to you know, what is the impact in the neighborhood when you buy a property that's been standing empty? Does that have an additional, you know, impact multiplier, if you like?
We take our responsibility to the community very seriously. So obviously an empty home in the middle of a street will be a magnet for antisocial behaviour. And if you're neighbouring it and there's no roof on it, the damp and the things like that. We did have one place that had been empty for several years without a roof. And it had the neighbours. We've been a back-to-back house. I don't know if everyone attending will know what a back-to-back house is, but very popular or notorious, good say, in Leeds. So the impact of that empty property and its depredations is on the neighbours around. So I think people are pleased to see us arrive and come and, you know, begin working on a property. We notify the community what we're up to. We probably become quite annoying during the build because of the noise and the dust and the dirt, but it's a short-term impact on them. And then our tenants will move in. And then we have our tenants trying to integrate into the neighbourhood, which is positive. It doesn't always work out because our tenants do bring a backstory with them, but we have a support team who work with the new tenants and support them. If tenants aren't obeying the rules or following the requirements of their tenancy agreement, we do act on that, because again, we take seriously our responsibilities for our tenants, but also for the communities as well, and we will act on antisocial behaviour and such like that. So I think overall, make a big impact on the community, plays a negative element. I think it gives us a hope that change is possible, that things can get better, that people are doing things, and that's good for community morale, I would argue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's exactly right. So I'm going to jump forward in some of the questions to ask about the project specifics, and then come back to talking about the financing landscape, because you know, we can't get away from a world where inflation seems to be a little bit stuck at the moment. We won't go into the reasons why. Interest rates are hovering around 5%. So we'll come back to that question. But I wonder if we could talk about the project specifics. So I'll just list those out. Create 8 new high quality homes, support 9 homeless people, adults and children.
Yeah.
Train 12 local long-term unemployed, and then improve thermal performance through retrofit. All of them very important individually, as a package, you know, very holistic. Kind of very interested to understand the importance of thermal performance and, you know, the running costs of a house. Who pays for them? Is it the tenants? Is it you? That kind of thing. So maybe if you can take us through those points, you know, expanding. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. So it's 6 to 8 properties. It depends on the amount of raise and how much the grant is, but 6 to 8. So the numbers have been based on 6 as the optimum number, but there's capacity to do more should the share issue reach its maximum amount as opposed to target. So The 6 homes haven't been identified. We know that they're in Leeds. We know the areas that will be in. We've got a good sense of what the price will be because we're buying properties all the time. So in terms of the properties, it's going to be a mixture of 1 bed and 2 bed. The 2 beds will probably be let to families, small families, or single parents with children, and then the 1 beds to single people. Probably younger people tends to be often the group that we'll target on there. So during the period of the project, as soon as we've raised sufficient funding, we'll begin the purchasing. We'll buy 1, 2, 3 and start works. I mean, you have like a rolling program over 12 to 18 months. So as the result of that, you'll have created the 6 to 8 homes. And when it says high quality, if anyone's seen our videos or the pictures of the works that we've done, one of the key values in Latch is about quality, and it crosses everything that we do in terms of our relationships with people. When it comes to properties, we really want to create a decent, good quality home. So in terms of the finish, the tiling, the kitchens, the bathrooms, the furnishing and everything that we provide is done to a really high standard. And it's a way of sending a message, if you like, to the new tenant about we value them and this is for you. This is a nice new home, a new start, to give them a positive reward. And it's really good when we move someone in and we get the feedback from people about how they're amazed that they've got such a lovely house. And is alongside that physical element of a lovely property, then is the work that we do with them to settle them in the house and support them on their journey with Latch throughout their time with us. So
James, I'm just gonna interject because of good timing from Milton. He says, as people who care for humanity, my wife and I are very attracted to this resource. Our question is there a minimum investment amount contribution to the project? So
yeah,
maybe you could expand around that.
Yeah. So well, I think what I'm trying to say throughout almost every answer in this is about the people and the humanitarian element. We're not property developers. Properties and empty homes is a means to an end. It's a mechanism for attracting funding, changing communities and changing people's lives. So I like the comment in your question that that's your motivation as well, because that's purely our motivation. We all come from different backgrounds, mine is in construction, so I have the physical skills, but the motivation is about people primarily. When it comes to the minimum investment share issue is set up to do is £500. We are actually looking to do and applying for some funding to do a share underwriting scheme, which will enable us to make shares available to people with less disposable income. And we're looking to do a scheme where perhaps you could buy your share over 2 years, whatever that will be, £30 a month. And we're hoping that will bring in a more diverse group of investors, and particularly some of our tenants on low income. So it's the 500 is the minimum, but there's a way of getting to the 500 over time. And that's a way to broaden the base of investors and widen it out to more people. So yeah, hopefully that's
so £500 minimum for this share offer.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there with £100,000, that's the maximum. So that's what the spread looks like.
Isn't that your planned investment, Paul?
Yeah, yes. And
Sorry.
that's not at all. It's absolutely fine. If I could, I would, believe me. So getting back onto track. Thank you very much for kind of like talking about that. Giving really valuing your tenants and giving them a quality home. I think that's really good to hear, because it sort of embodies the care and the humanity, doesn't it, actually? So maybe go on to, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just pick up on the other parts of that question, because I've got questions in me, so it's keeping them structured. So yeah, I think it's important to note that about the people and both what the house is about and the support, because the objective isn't to create new homes, it's to create new homes, to create home for people to change their lives, to move on to independent living, and that's what the support service is. When it comes to the long-term unemployed and training, many of the projects will recruit trainees to work on there, and it's about skills development to a certain extent, but it's also about confidence, self-esteem, a place to be, focus, realizing potential and opportunities. So it's like dedicated staff will work with them on site, small numbers in terms of more like an apprenticeship, and the skills are wide ranging. We're not going to create a joiner or a plasterer off one project, but we'll give people a taste of it We also link up with the local college and other organisations to provide site-based training for there. And what we get a lot back there, people enjoy doing their training and volunteering work to give back to people who then know they're helping them themselves. It opens up opportunities and a future for them in terms of what their interests might be. Many of the existing staff who work on the property refurbs are former trainees as well. We're not big enough to create jobs for everyone that will join us, but we're able to recruit some of them when opportunities arise, and also then assist them into more long-term employment where they need to be. On the thermal performance, obviously, fuel poverty is an issue for all our tenants. It always has been, and it's obviously massively worse now. So we've been interested in retrofit for quite a long time, trying how to improve the properties. So we've gone out of our way a little bit in this project to put more money into the budget to enhance that, so we can do it more thoroughly and more developed. So we have a model that we use, which essentially is to install internal wall insulation to all the surfaces. There's intensive air tightness activities to seal every single gap. Every floorboard in the cellar is sealed, every pipe entry is sealed, super thermal doors, mechanical ventilation to deal with damp and condensation, but retain the heat. So it's quite extensive, the works that we do. And the benefit to that is to enable the tenant to live more affordably in the house. Interesting issue that comes with that is about behaviour. You can make a thermal house, but the tenants have to learn how to use it. You know, just because it's warm, you need to still look after the property. So there's an element of the support workers trying to get over the idea, well, just because you property's warm, you don't need to, you know, in where you manage the damp and the condensation and water and moisture and stuff like that. So there's no educational element to it. But the point is to maximise the opportunity when we're doing the property to add added benefits, which is to make an home affordable both for the immediate family moving in and over the long term, and set an example as well.
Yeah, brilliant. It's great to hear how much thought has gone into this, and also I imagine you've had a lot of experience. So some of these lessons, I can imagine they've some of them I imagine have been hard won. Some of them are common sense, I guess.
Yeah, well, this is having people who've been with Latch a long time and come through the training. You've got people who are dedicated, but also understand the way we want things to in terms of the quality and attention to detail. That's a big requirement of this kind of work when it comes to improving the installation performance. Money's a key thing. Like we don't put photovoltaics or anything like that on at the moment, but it's something we're interested in exploring, and we're looking at possibly training staff up who could do that. So you've got energy generation taking place. It's like quite low cost to improve the energy efficiency performance of the building. When you get onto generation, it's a bit more expensive, more technical, but that's an area we might explore further on in the project, subject to everything going to plan and budget, which is always on any construction project a challenge. But yeah,
which leads us nicely onto the next question about the financing landscape. In terms of where do the different sources of funds come from? So maybe think of it like a bucket. You've got your sand, you've got your stones, you've got something else. So that there are the layers. And you know, what is it about community shares? Why are they an essential part of that funding mix?
Throughout our history, we've always blended different types of funding, which essentially could boil down to grant funding, sort of donation type funding, and then loan finance. So we've had a blend of that, and that ratio is, as economic times have changed, is where you might have had 90% grant back in the good old days. Now grant might be 15, 20, 30, 40. So you've had that gap about to fill it. So we have used some loan finance, but in the current context, loan finance is difficult, challenging, and brings challenges with it. And in terms of what share issue brings, the excitement of a share issue is it brings in members, it brings in energy, brings in new people, it spreads the message, and it feels more aligned with our values to turn to the community and ask them to support us. When we did the original share issue, it was incredibly exciting to watch and find so many people appreciative of what we do and want us to support us. It was like the most exciting fundraising that we've been involved in, particularly watching the thing go up for the duration. So I think the community share issue aligns with our values better than, say, traditional mortgage finance with a bank. Although we use ethical banks and things like that, it's just different. So it feels qualitatively different, and it's really nice to have people. You know, we've met some of the investors that come to our events and talk to them, and it's just like it's inspiring to find people who are interested in supporting you in that way. It's particularly feels really good about it. In terms of that bucket, the share investment will make up a proportion of it. We're blessed in Leeds. We have Leeds City Council, who I'm contractually obliged to always pay great praise to because they're so helpful in LATCH's history. But they have something called the Right to Buy grant programme, which makes available up to 40% of the capital cost of any creation of social housing. So they've an application has gone into them. It's been approved through the first round. So this project will be a blend of Right to Buy grant, investment funding. It'll be topped up with some small amount of borrowing if necessary, depending on how much we raise. And then the model works, that works technically based on current estimates. The estimates are based, there's contingency in purchase prices, there's contingency in refurb costs. Project's going to run over 18 months, so we don't know where we'll be. So we tried to make some allowances for that. But then through the duration of the project, we'll also seek other funding, perhaps more funding to enhance some of the energy efficiency features, or perhaps more things to invest in trainees and things like that. So it's not like you have a project that works on paper, a beginning and an end, but you'll try and build it, make it bigger and more impactful as you proceed.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that insight into the funding mix and why community shares not only bring an attractive capital base, but an energy to the project as well, and new members. And I was going to ask, in an ideal world, I suppose it would be a mix of community shares and grant money. But something to say about the community shares is that the headline interest rate is 5%.
Yeah.
And if investors are feeling very generous, they can opt for a 0% or 3% interest rate.
Yeah.
Doesn't affect, you can still get, if you want your 5%, you can get your 5%. But if you feel like giving a little bit extra, then you can select those other options too to help sort of reduce your cost of capital. And takes us onto the question of what are the risks in terms of the business model? Because it's pretty straightforward, really. I mean, easy for me to say sitting here, you're at the sharp end.
Yeah.
But when we're looking at it, it's houses, it's serving tenants, and there's an income stream. Yeah.
Well, fundamentally, if I was an investor, the key thing, the rock solid base is that the money goes into a property that remains there. Whatever else happens, that's always there, isn't it? So it's rock solid into something that's tangible, physical, and will always be a basis for generating revenue. So that, in a sense, is why we feel so confident in the share issue and are so behind it, because we know it's solid in that regard. Obviously, there's the running of the business and the things like that. The key risk I identified is can we find the homes at the right prices that we put inside the project profile? Are we buying properties all the time? We're seeing prices drop a little bit, and we're confident that with the contingency we've allowed, we'll purchase the properties at a suitable price. Similarly, on the refurbishment, can we complete them inside budget? Again, we've allowed a 15% contingency because of the time duration, and there is flexibility within the scheme, and this idea of continual fundraising to fill any gaps that should emerge. And on the previous project, which share issues people invested in, that's gone to plan very, very much. Another element will we be able to let the properties to generate the rental incomes? There's 8,000 people needing housing in Leeds prior to our target group. So I think the 6-8 that we're going to create, no problem at all. We know demand is massive. When we offer a property available, within 4 hours, we've had enough applicants to shut the advert down, so to speak, and then we interview and assess and such and such. Other is, can we collect the rent? You've got people moved in, can you collect rent? Our rent arrears performance on average, our target is around 2%, which works out about £15,000 loss of rent a year. And we always come in or around that figure. So our performance in collecting rent is really, really good. So that means your incomes are fairly stable. I mentioned about in fixed assets as well. So you're in something good. And on our previous share issue in March, we were able to invite investors to withdraw interest should they want to, in line with the offer, and that a certain number took that up. I can't quite remember how much of it we had to pay out. So we've shown we can do it so far. Challenging times, but sadly, in some ways, these challenging times work to our benefit because houses become available, more demand for housing. So it's quite a robust and strong business case that can be made to show that it'll work and it'll work for the duration as well.
Yeah. And you've been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. We know what to do. We know the mistakes and errors, and it is essentially, buying an house, doing it up and letting it. But we make it more than that because we want to have more impact than that. But from a project delivery point of view, a financial management point of view, it actually has quite a clear logic. And, we've done it 108 times before.
There you go. There you go. And of course, it's not as if you're the pioneers in this. There are lots of other organizations doing this all the way around the country. So it's quite and it is an established way of solving this challenge, right?
Yeah, it's a well-established model in terms of, there's a few groups who do it in Leeds. There's projects in Hull who do it as well, Gyroscope, who in a sense, without too much lineage, they did it first, and Latch stole their idea, and then other people stole it, taken the idea forward as well. So, and we're all part of a network that work together and support each other on the innovations and ways forward. So yeah, it's it works, it delivers, and it's sustainable, and it's perhaps more important than all, it's desperately needed. It's a terrible situation of 8,000 homeless people and 4,000 empty properties, which is just crazy.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, James. So we're literally 32 minutes. Oh, hang on a second. We've got another question from Richard. He says, do you let a house at normal commercial rates or lower?
Yeah. And
if lower, by how much?
Yeah, all our tenants will be on housing benefit when they join Latch by definition, because if they were working, they wouldn't need to be housing supported by Latch. Our rents are agreed with Leeds City Council and what's classed as exempt rents. So they're based on a full cost recovery model of what it costs Latch to provide the services. So our tenants with us, that will be the rents that they paid. And as they move to employment or become more independent, then we assist them to move on. So those rents cover all the costs of delivering all the services that we provide during their time.
Yeah. So I mean, what does that look like in terms of a normal commercial rate versus?
Yeah, it will be higher than the commercial rate, but it's kind of quite hard to find a match. Where the areas that we are and the type of properties we are, and the fact our accommodation is fully furnished and fully kitted out, because it's based on the idea the tenants have nothing. So the rent will comprise a core rent, which is probably less than the commercial rate, but then there's a service charge which covers everything. Right. Out carpets, bedding, towels, pots and pans, which takes it quite a lot higher than the commercial rate. Right,
because you've got to pay for the refurbishment, basically.
Yeah.
And the payment in effect is coming from housing benefit.
Yeah, it comes from housing benefit, paid directly to Latch, and that's on the basis that the tenant, has priority A status that the group and sufficient support needs to need other services that we provide, and we just submit the applications to Leeds City Council and then annually agree the rent rates with them, based on the context of inflation and such and such.
Yeah. So it's all visible and within the local council social housing framework.
Yeah, it's all visible to them and agreed with them in terms of the rates that we charge.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, James. Good question. So 35 minutes into the Cuppa Club. So last chances for the audience to pose their questions, but you know, I have to say, I think it's been thoroughly, clearly and well delivered in terms of what you're aiming to achieve and what you've done and why the impacts are there and why the model works. So can you give us a summary and a call to action, James, before we wrap up?
So yeah, how long have we got? I'm only kidding. No, I suppose what I see and what drives me and what I'd like to ask people to help with is there's lots of homeless people in Leeds. There's lots of empty properties in Leeds. And the missing ingredient, if you like, is the capital funding to address those two issues. LATCH has enough experience and track record to make a project work that tries to address those two questions. We have a relationship with Leeds City Council, which should result in us being able to draw down a significant amount of grant, and we're looking for the element from investors to bring that together so that we can address this issue of the homelessness, the empty homes, and have a real impact on people and their lives and help them change lives and make a real big difference to the deprived and economically disadvantaged people within Leeds. And we'd just like to invite the investors to help us do that and come on this journey with us. So thank you for listening to me, and hopefully I've answered all your questions and inspired you enough to want to help. Thank you. Brilliant.
Thanks, James. So, you know, remains to say that the offer's got off to a brilliant start, 32% filled, including match funding. So it's up to just up to £210,000. So only 340,000 from the target to get to the target. So that's fantastic. So let's keep it coming. And we'll be sending updates on progress, video highlights, and news as the milestones are hit. So please do visit the website and take a look at the offer, and feel free to review the others. And also to, you know, if you do have further questions, please do send them to us at Ethex, and we'll get those over to James. So it just remains for me to say thank you once again for your time, and thank you very much to James for giving us, you know, the details of this incredibly impactful organisation, LATCH. Thank you very much.
Thank you.